It's time to strap in for another edition of the CarsGuide Podcast, the show that takes you beyond the test drive. This is episode number 229, Top 10 JDM Models That Should Come to Australia. I'm CarsGuide Deputy Editor James Cleary, and joining today to look at the Japanese domestic market models that should be in local showrooms are News Editor Tung Nguyen.
Hello.
And the Sparky heading up our EV guide, Tom White.
No, I'd be careful about calling me a Sparky, but hi.
Yes, no, you'll do it for cash, depending on the job, right? We'll also take a look at the fresh metal we've been driving this week and unearth comment of the week. YouTubers, you can jump ahead to each section of the show via the time codes in the notes or chapter markers in the timeline. So let's go. This is another game of automotive show and tell because each of us has identified 3 JDM models and we don't know each other's nominees. What we do know is there are no double ups or overlaps because, Tung, you've commissioned a story looking at this exact topic.
Yes.
And we've had colleague Justin Hilliard collating the votes, just like Arthur Anderson at the Oscars.
Mm-hmm.
But actually that didn't end well. But I think we'll be okay. So the plan is to take turns announcing a contender until all 9 are on the table, and then a jointly agreed 10th nomination will round out the list. So I want to start with you, Tung. Tung, so we don't know. We don't know what each other's are. So this will be a surprise for everybody.
Okay.
Kick us off with your first JDM contender for the Aussie market.
I'm glad you guys are, because this one is going to blow you away. Okay. The first one I think should come here is the Nissan Note, specifically the Nismo version. Okay.
Okay.
Nissan has left the passenger car market. They don't do hatchbacks. They don't do sedans. It's all SUVs and utes for them at the moment, aside from the all-electric Leaf, of course, and their sports cars. But they need to play in that space. If they want to be a genuine top 5 contender against the likes of Toyota, Mazda, Hyundai, I think they need to have a small car, and the Note fits the bill. They've talked about bringing the Note e-Power here to Australia before, years and years and years ago. It never materialized. But I think now is the time because the Note Nismo is e-powered. So it means that there's a small, I think it's a 1.2 litre petrol engine that powers the electric motors. The electric motors then drive the wheels. So it feels like an electric car.
Yep.
But you don't have to charge it. You go to any service station, fill it up with petrol, and away you go.
So no parallel running. The motor is purely a generator.
Yep.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep. So it solves that problem that us Aussies have of long charge times and extended drive distances. You can run it like a normal car, but still have the benefit of it feeling like an EV and it having lower emissions. What do you guys think?
I think you're on the money. I mean, I suppose it's not. It'll come up occasionally during our chat, but I think there's a whole part of the market that's been vacated by the brands that we're familiar with. And is rapidly being filled in by the brands that we're not familiar with.
Yes.
So there's a conscious decision to say, we're all going to move up market, and it leaves this opportunity, I think, that others, particularly newer Chinese brands, are grabbing with both hands. So I think it would be a canny move.
Tom,
yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I really like the Note. Like last time I was over in Japan, I saw a whole bunch of them, and I just thought that they were great little fun cars. And e-Power is something that we don't have here yet. But it's a different kind of hybrid technology, which sort of promises something a bit more different, a little bit more on the electric side of the sort of driving equation than it is on the combustion side. So I think it's a cool little car. It's really interesting. And I agree. I think it's a segment that has been abandoned by Japanese automakers just sort of generally. And it's a bit of a shame because, we miss out on, interesting, fun little cars like this.
I suppose the marketing campaign writes itself, doesn't it? You hit the right note, it'd be some kind of musical, who knows? Or unfortunate if you do have a crash. Yes, you've hit the wrong note there. Okay, that's a great start. So Tom, number 2, would you please give us your first contender?
Okay, well, I just think this one's a massive no-brainer because it has to be the number 1 grey import at the moment.
Yep.
It's the Toyota Alphard, right?
Okay.
Big people mover. We've got the Granvia instead, which makes sense.
Yep.
From like a great big point of view of, we need to plan our models for the market and whatever, because it shares, all of its panels and parts and stuff the Toyota Hiace, and you need a Hiace, obviously. But is it enjoying the sales success of the Tarago? You know, I would say no. And I think this car fills that gap perfectly, mainly because it makes so much sense because it's a hybrid. You can have it with a 2.5 liter hybrid drivetrain. It looks the business. To anyone who doesn't know, essentially, this is a people mover Toyota Crown. So there are other people movers in Toyota's lineup, but this one is the boss. This one's the big luxury hybrid. It's smooth. It's slick. There's a Lexus version of it now. So I don't know, maybe never say never.
Well, I mean, it's interesting you raised the point about the Tarago because once, you know, I think about 1% of the market was people movers, but all of that was Tarago, and Toyota kind of ceded that off to Honda, and now Kia tends to dominate in that space. They do need something to take the role of a Tarago.
See, while I agree with you, Tom, the Alphard would be very cool here. You know, I think it would just be positioned too highly. You know, we saw the Tarago, you know, at a certain price point, and when that was replaced by Granvia, it kind of took a step up. I think Alphard would even take a step up above that and just kind of price out most of those, you know, families who are looking for a cheap, affordable, reliable, you know, big family bus like that.
Yep.
But the silly thing I think is it's already selling here and they're so expensive. People grey import them. And I just had a quick look at some classifieds listings. If you buy one that's just been freshly grey imported, it's like well over $100,000.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
$105,000 to $120,000 for one that is like fresh. It's brand new. And for older ones, it's easy to fetch over $90,000, even for one that's been like decently used.
Wow.
Is that the Velifire? The Alphard Velfire?
The Velfire is like, it's one of these weird like Japanese split brand things where they've got like a sporty one and a luxury one.
Gotcha.
So like they do with the Crown, they've got like the Crown Athlete and the Crown Majesta. It's the same sort of thing. It's like, okay, you can pick like the sporty version and they're like different body panels and stuff.
Right. Crown Athlete sounds like a contradiction in terms, but I'm not familiar with the car. So.
Yeah, whereas Crown Majesta sort of, you know, makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah, totally. All right.
I actually did have a chance to talk to Toyota about bringing the Alphard in, and they basically confirmed that that's why, like they need that parts commonality with Hiace. That's why they chose Granvia, and they would love to have it, but you know, maybe the business case doesn't add up. I don't know. They're selling quite a few of them, whether they like it or not.
Well, look, that's amazing because I'm going to bring my second choice up to first because the segue is too good to ignore because I'm nominating the Toyota Noah / Voxy. Okay. So it, I would say, is possibly better positioned to replace a Tarago. So two models, typically Japanese domestic market. They've just got different styling, but they're fundamentally the same. Both on the TNGA platform, 7-seaters. The second row is captain's chairs, but there's an Ottoman mechanism. So I haven't been able to explore exactly what that is, but you can also have an 8-seat option. This is not a huge car. It's sliding side doors. It has the full Toyota Safety Sense suite. There's a hybrid available, 2-litre with CVT, a 1.8-litre hybrid, front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. And if you do a straight swap to Australian dollars without taking any kind of sensible import duty or distribution costs, it's about 24.5 grand. That's where it starts.
Wow.
So even if you have to, you know, slap a whole bunch of stuff on top, it could still be competitive and puts Toyota in a really almost unique position to have that size 7-seater in a people mover side sliding door type vehicle. And I've seen them around, much as you say, Tom. You see the Alphards and others all over the place. I've seen, like, what's that? Voxy. Saw the first one a few years ago, and they are around. So there's seemingly an appetite for them. I really like it.
That's fantastic. I think more people movers. I am a huge, I guess it makes so much sense in Japan, right? You know, smaller cars, really tight spaces, sliding doors, you know, reduces those car park bingles. But, you know, I'm sure we could see more of them here and it would make sense too.
And if you can make the car look half interesting without it being just bland and utilitarian, that's where some of the emotion comes into it and people are ready to buy one and mix your practicality and function with some kind of attractive form. All right, that's great. That's the first circle complete. So, Tung, we are back to you for the start of round 2, please.
I can't believe it's taken us this long to get into K-car territory, but I will broach the subject.
Good.
My next car on this list is the Honda S660.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
This is a car I've personally had my eye on for years and years and years and years. And for those that don't know, it's a 2-seat convertible, mid-engine, rear-wheel drive. And of course, it playing in the K-car class, the engine displacement, the size is 660 cc's, produces 47 kilowatts of
It'd be
power.
brutal. Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah.
But you can get it in a manual. And by all reports from overseas, it's a heck of a lot of fun to drive. I'm in the same vein as like the MX-5 or the Toyota GR86 and BRZ, lightweight, rear-wheel drive, low on power, which means you're not breaking the speed limit to have a bit of fun. This Honda S660 could be, a cheaper or smaller alternative to those cars.
And the interesting thing is it wouldn't do anything to upset Honda's aspirations as a premium car brand. A really cheeky, fun, cool looking little convertible like that could only complement that kind of thing without taking away from it.
Totally.
Tom, I've heard you talking about this car before as well. I think you're a bit of a fan, no?
I'd love one. They're just everything about this car is awesome. Mid-engine. Are you serious? And it's like a little turbo.
Yep.
Okay, that's good.
The styling of it is really cool. It's like, did I lag out?
You did.
Oh,
you lagged just a bit. Rewind and replay.
All right. Well, what I was saying was I love it. I think it's huge fun. Mid-engine rear-wheel drive is ridiculous for a car in that category.
Yes.
And I love the styling, how it's like a toy-sized NSX.
And Tung, tell me, am I right in thinking there have been 2 versions? Is it in its second generation? Do you know? Question without notice.
I think it's only been one version. It has been facelifted. It has been updated.
Okay.
You get Honda's got the modulo mod the different car part catalog things that you can slap onto them and make it look all
it would be absolutely one of those. There'd be a whole floor at Autobacks with accessories just for S660s, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
And you can actually, people have imported them to Australia, but they're hugely expensive. To buy one, it costs I'm just having a quick browse now at some classifieds. It's between 40 and 50 grand.
Okay. Right. Yes, that's a substantial figure for a relatively insubstantial car.
Yeah.
And of course, it was announced pretty recently that they're discontinuing it as well, which is a bit of a shame.
That is a
production
shame.
ended in March of this year. So.
Okay, well, let's say it should have been here, and maybe the ones that are already here will only be more expensive as time goes by because it's such an appealing thing. Great. Tom, back to you.
Okay, well, I've got one, the car behind me, Toyota Race, another small one. This car is actually based on a Daihatsu. So it's on a different platform, which is like Daihatsu's version of TNGA called DNGA. And
how creative.
How original.
Who would have thought?
But it's got a tiny little 1-liter engine. It's CVT only, front-wheel drive, or in Japan, you can get it as a hybrid rear-wheel, all-wheel drive as well. And that has a 3-cylinder 1-liter engine, or you can get it with a 3-cylinder 1.2-liter engine with hybrid as well. I think this is cool because this is like the Note, one of those segments that's been abandoned by Japanese car makers generally. That affordable end of the market just doesn't exist anymore. Yes, we have Yaris Cross, but this is a little bit smaller and it's not as expensive in Japan.
Well, think about Yaris. Yaris is still available, but its starting point is so much higher than it has been traditionally. There's room below for a car like that for sure.
I think it looks really cool too. Like the Yaris Cross is confronting, but it's not for everyone. Whereas this car, it just has cool, sporty styling. It's funky, it's small, and it's really practical too. It's got quite a bit of boot space for its size, and I've seen one in a Diaba in Japan and actually sat it in, and it just feels like the Hyundai Venue rival that Toyota doesn't have anymore.
Gotcha. Well, it feels right in Toyota terms in that traditionally Toyota models creep in size gradually over generations, and then something comes in underneath. Think about RAV4, which started out as a pretty small car, and now it's become much, much bigger than that. And then CHR arrives. And then that'll probably creep up over time and something else comes in underneath. So maybe the raise is in their sights as we speak.
Who knows? We can only hope so.
We can only hope so. All right, now I'm going to come up with what was first, now second, the Mazda Bongo van. This, people of a certain age will remember the Mazda Bongo van, having been in Australia in times past. But there are two models, Standard and DX. It's a sliding door van. There's even a cab chassis version. The Standard version has manual window cranks. This is another model that I think has some Daihatsu roots, but Daihatsu seems to just spread itself pretty thin around the place. I understand the Toyota connection, but anyway, two-wheel drive and four-wheel drive. It's a 1.5 litre petrol, 71 kilowatts, 134 Newton meters. You can get a 5-speed manual or a 4-speed auto. It's just over 4 meters long. And you get 1.4 meters of load space with the seats up in the van version and 1.8 with the seats folded. So it's not bad in terms of the space it offers. And it starts in Japan at 1.8 million yen. So for a two-wheel drive 5-speed, that's $19,200. LED headlights and DRLs and taillights. You get manual AC, steel wheels. To me, it looks a bit like a Fiat Multipla of times past. It's got the kind of jutting out jaw on the headlights on the top of it. But I think you'd have to kind of have a dotted line down the Mazda office where all the upmarket aspirations sit on one side, and then we're going to make some actual coin on a commercial vehicle over here. Because I think, things like Volkswagen's very big in that space. Mm-hmm. Even is Peugeot Partner still on sale? That has a certain amount of popularity. I think they could dive in there and do reasonably well with it.
I agree, JC. I mean, I think that segment of the light commercial vehicle market is often so ignored. Everyone talks about utes and, dual cabs and that higher end, expensive side of things. But there is this huge gap here that needs to be serviced by cars like the Mazda Bongo
van. And what a name. I mean, it just echoes with Aussiness. It needs to be in this market.
Agreed.
I love the idea of it. And I think, Japanese brands in particular do well with these things because people want that, reliability, that parts commonality. And you're right. That segment's so ignored. And then end of financial year comes around and suddenly we see all this surge of interest in Toyota Hiace and Peugeot Partner and these other models that fall to the wayside during the year that maybe don't get the attention they deserve. So I think there's definitely something in it. And there's other cool ones too, like Nissan NV200 and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
All these other cool commercial offerings from overseas that just don't come here anymore.
The nice thing about this one, it has that gear shift in the dash type deal, which is nice. It also has what looks like leftover steering wheels from a mid-90s 929 actually on there, but it does have an airbag, thankfully. But it's a really interesting spec and the design is kind of cool. So I reckon it could, seriously, I reckon it could do well. So that is round 2, done and dusted. We're at the beginning of round 3, Tung. Start us off.
All right. I couldn't help myself. I had to go for another K car. I reckon the Suzuki Hustler. And I think if you've ever been to Japan, you would have seen this car before, because anytime you go into a station or a shopping center, it just happens to be like a Hustler, Suzuki Hustler display stand right there somewhere.
Yeah.
I remember when I first went to Japan, years and years ago. But now it has been made into a second generation car that was launched in 2020. The styling, imagine sort of like an upright, boxy, but very small, crossover type thing. The second generation car has drawn parallels to the styling of the Jimny.
Okay.
So it almost complements that car in a way. The Jimny would be the more off-road focused, sibling versus the Hustler, which is the more city focused, comfortable daily commute sort of car. Of course, being a K car, 660 cc's, very small, very tiny. In naturally aspirated form, it's 36 kilowatts.
Yes.
Yeah.
There you go. Yep. That's stump pulling power right there. Yeah. No connection to the very handsome Hillman Hustler from the 1960s, Tung? No?
Nope.
No. Okay. I thought there might have been some kind of inspiration lurking there, but no, that's good.
It's funny, Tung. I wanted to pick this and was told that somebody had already picked it.
Oh.
They are just the best. Like, okay, you can look at the pictures and it sort of looks like this dorky little boxy thing, but you see it in real life and you're like, it's so cool. Like everything about it is cool. It's so interesting. All the body panels are like really sort of interestingly designed. It's got cool tiny little wheels which you can get as steelies even, which I love, and it's hugely popular in Japan. It's everywhere in Japan, and I think you're right, the styling absolutely complements Jimny. I think, look, Suzuki, if you're listening, I love the Ignis, but this is better. Give us this instead.
I think you're right, Tom. It's so much about the detail. You can just tell that the designers and stylists have enjoyed their work, that they've really gone to town and made just little lines, little use of typography, had fun with it, and it shows in the end result. That's fantastic. All right, now, is it my turn? It is my turn. I'm in the K car class as well, because I think this is an underrated and almost people are just leaving it alone. They should be in there. It's the Honda N1. Now, I don't know whether you guys have come across this one. I'd seen it before. I just love the look of it. So again, it's the 660. It's a triple, 5-door hatch, front-wheel drive and all-wheel drive, a stonking 43 kilowatts and 65 Newton meters, but it only weighs 840 kegs, and it's only 3.4 meters long. So it is tiny. It's a city car for sure, but there's an RS version, which is front-wheel drive only. It pumps it up to 47 kilowatts and 104 Newton meters.
Wow.
But the entry car, if you again do the straight kind of currency, this is the most unsophisticated import equation you could come up with, starts at 17 grand. And the RS is 21 and a half. Now there's an original and then a middle model called the Premium, and the RS, and the last two are turbos. So that's why the engine comes up a little bit. And again, it's just in that design detailing. There are steel wheel versions, but the wheels are black. It has a little chrome hubcap in the center and then a chrome trim ring around the outside. So it looks like some kid in the 70s who was doing up his car on a budget. CVT or the RS has a 6-speed manual. And I just think it's a fantastic looking thing. It has this big wide-eyed kind of expression. And I love it. I think it'd be great to see it out here.
Just a shame that Honda can't bring in more models, right? From overseas markets.
That's right. They're trimming rather than adding. But I suppose that's just more my kind of emotional response to that car.
Well, it's funny. I mean, I think they've got the willpower, right? They've talked in the past, Honda Australia have talked in the past about sourcing their cars more from Japan now, relying less on Thailand. It does kind of open some options up, It does. I suppose you've got to be frank about its prospects in terms of a safety rating. Small cars tend to struggle. They are very much for urban areas. They won't be cut much slack by the likes of ANCAP. So you'd have to think that plays into it as well. But if they could get the price right, a city car only, first car buyers, maybe, who knows?
I think that's, the same sort of thing. Like safety generally is a problem for all of these cars. It's probably the main reason that we don't get a lot of them. It's not so much that they won't comply with our regulations or whatever. It's not so much that, it's just getting it a safety rating is a nightmare and it's hard, and all the systems are different and there's different requirements in Japan, which is such a shame because I really do love the Honda N1 as well. It's one of those kind of like Fiat 500-esque, this little, it's got so much character. Yeah. And I love how the styling references the Honda N600, which is like the pre-Civic ancestor Honda car. So with the little light round lights and the bumpy dash and stuff. It's cool.
Click into the accessories part of the website and prepare to be amazed. In terms of what you can actually buy just from Honda for the car, let alone what's out in the aftermarket. It just seems like a ton of fun. Actually, it's not a ton; it's 870 odd kilos, but it's fun. So I think that gets us to 9. Am I right?
No, I've got one more. I've got a.
Oh, did I jump in? I'm so sorry. Okay, I probably put us out of sync. Go ahead.
That's all right. We can mix up the order.
Okay, go ahead.
Look, I picked 2 sensible ones, which we've had so far, right? 2 sensible ones, which probably stand a reasonable chance at selling some numbers in our markets, and they would fill a gap in lineups. Then I thought, well, I'll pick a silly one, and my silly one is the Nissan Skyline. Now, I just think that this car fills a gap currently because the R35 is behind us, right? We still haven't got the 370Z or the new Z, whatever it's going to be.
The Z.
The Z, yeah, that's exactly what it's going to be. And now since they've done the 2019 update of the Skyline, they've just gone full Japan with it. You know, they got rid of the Infinity styling because we knew that car as the Infinity Q50 for a while, but now it's got a Nissan face, it's got Nissan branding, it's gone full Skyline, and they've brought back a 400R variant, which is a twin turbo V6, but rear wheel drive. They haven't even bothered screwing around with, you know, let's give it heaps of traction. Let's go, send all of that to the
so
rear
it's a
wheel.
Stinger. It's a Stinger equivalent in some ways.
Yeah, exactly. It's that kind of like halo sedan. And I know sedans don't sell very well, but in terms of like the history of Nissan, in terms of you know, just Nissan having that kind of aspirational halo model, I think this one, it can sort of sneak in there, surely. Just give us a couple of model years, you know. And in terms of the failure of the Q50, yeah, okay. But I don't think people were that big on Infinity as a whole. I think if that car came here branded as a Skyline in the right specs, its chances would have been a bit better. There's just enough history behind that.
Well,
badge.
a Skyline outside of GTR, I mean, Skyline has such history here anyway. There are a lot of devotees for the older models that come in as grey imports. Yep, I reckon you're onto something there. What about you, Tung?
I don't think so. I'm going to be that guy.
Okay, good. Good on you.
Puts his foot down and is like, it's not a Skyline. You know, Skyline should be this sort of car and not that sort of car. And while, look, you know, it's got the performance angle and element, I think it almost would dilute the name, you know? You know, just like there are rumors that Mitsubishi are going to do like an SUV evolution, you know? Like, and they turned the Eclipse into a crossover. I think kind of that Skyline for this market would kind of take away from that history and heritage, because I mean, what steering has it got on it? You know, is it a steer-by-wire sort of thing like the Q50 was? Because immediately that would, you know, really kind of separate the what the Skyline should be, like a driver's, you know, coupe or sedan even, to what it would actually be, which is a bit numb and vague feeling. Well, it was in the Q50. Yeah, too true. Yeah.
Okay, but that's a good one. All right. Sorry, I jumped in ahead of you, Tom. I'm feeling particularly crap about that. Sorry about that. Anyway, now.
Not a big deal.
So that, I think, brings us to the 9. I'm going to chuck in our 10th. And it's very similar to your S660 Tung, but it is the Toyota Copen GR Sport.
Yes.
It's been plucked from Daihatsu, quite obviously, but it's been given a bit of a GR makeover. It's a folding hardtop, front-wheel drive. It also weighs 870 kilos, 2-seater. It's the 660 turbo triple, 47 kilowatts, 92 newton meters. It's only 3.4 meters long. It has a decent boot, even with the top folded, but Recaros, BBS wheels, a Momo steering wheel, adjustable dampers, limited slip diff, tuned steering, stiffened body. And if you do a straight swap to Australian dollars, $25,500.
Wow.
So, you know, even if you started to stack in whatever it takes to get that car accredited for this market, for Australian design rules and put it out there, it wouldn't be a stratospheric price. Toyota's really hard on GR at the moment. It's something they absolutely want to establish. A little hot convertible car like that, I reckon, would be amazing.
It's been here before.
The Copen has, for sure.
Yeah, we had it once as Daihatsu Copen, I think, in the past. But yeah, no, you're right. I love this thing in the same way that I love the S660. I think, to be honest, the styling of this car is a bit more confronting than even the S660. It's like the boot line looks weird and it's got strange rear lights, and there's 2 different versions of it, with completely different styling in Japan. But I reckon this would be so much fun to drive. So
I agree.
I'm willing to put all of that behind me to get into one.
I think, I mean, in its final days, Daihatsu was not a success story in this market, and Toyota had to make the difficult decision to retire the brand from this market. I don't think Copens were flying out of the showroom either. But this is just a special proposition. You know, it's the GR Sport. Toyota would put some weight behind it. I think it would find a market that passionately wanted that car. It'd be a different proposition to when Copen was here
Imagine
before.
that as a lineup. You walk into a Toyota dealership, and in the GR corner, not only do you have GR Yaris, GR Corolla, Supra, GR86, but there's a tiny little Copen.
GR Copen, wouldn't that be great? Yeah,
it's the entry level to the brand that you get in, you love the car, you love what the brand entails, and then you step up into the higher models. It makes sense.
There you go. So that's our top 10. That's our 10 JDM cars that we think for fun or otherwise should come to this market. So it'd be great to hear what you think too. I'm sure we'll get some comments in YouTube or wherever you're listening to this podcast. But it is time at this point to move on to our garage and the cars that we have in fact been driving this prior week. Tom, could I start with you, please? It's a Ford, but fill us in on the details.
Yeah, it's the Ford Escape plug-in hybrid, which we've been waiting for it for a while. There was a delay in bringing it here. And I was curious to drive it, see what it brings to this kind of emerging plug-in hybrid space. There's quite a few models there now. And only a few weeks ago, I also drove the MG HS plug-in hybrid, the updated version of that. In terms of charging, probably charges a little slower than I'd like as well, which is pretty typical of these mid-size plug-in hybrid SUVs, because they tend to give you a lower speed AC charger when the battery is quite big to facilitate that electric range. But the interior kind of left me wanting. The software was kind of poor, and that was a bit of a shame. But as an overall product, it's okay.
Okay, all right, that's good. Nice summation. And thank you, Tom. Tung, what have you been steering?
I'm going to keep it Japanese themed for now. I was going to talk about the Honda HRV, but I can't because it's under embargo. So I will instead talk about the BRZ that I had last week. Man, where do I even begin with this car? I've always been a lover of rear-wheel drive Japanese coupes. My first car was a Toyota Supra. I moved to a Mazda RX-8 after that, and then got an MX-5. So, I'm very much, yes, Japanese sporty coupes are my thing. I had the automatic version, which turns out didn't mind so much at the end.
I agree.
It wasn't too bad.
Yep.
I commuted into the office, which is in the middle of Melbourne CBD. A couple of days last week, and having that automatic was an absolute blessing, I think, sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic. But, the big news about this car, obviously the second generation car, is the bigger engine, 2.4 litres. It's now 170 kilowatts or 249 Newton meters. And
no difference between manual or auto, which is interesting in this instance, yeah?
Yes, you're absolutely correct. And we've all read the reviews. We've all seen the launch reviews. It's really fixed, that flat torque curve. It's so much punchier off the line, no matter what gear you're in, just stab at the throttle and you've got a bit of power and poke. But it's still undeniably fun, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I drove it and only a couple of weeks ago. You talk about that torque curve. It was crazy in the 2-litre. It wasn't so much a curve as saw teeth. It just went all over the place. When you looked at it mapped out, it's much, much better in that regard.
I just find you're not constantly having to, rev it out and ring it out to, have any bit of fun with it. You can literally just leave it in automatic, poke at the throttle and away you go.
And the standard rims, the 18s, everybody that cared about it went to a +1 as soon as they got their 2-litre BRZ. So they've listened to that as well. Yep. The wheels themselves are attractive, and the better Michelin rubber, I think, makes it a more engaging and more enjoyable proposition.
Yeah, I do wish they kind of changed the interior a little bit more. It still feels a little bit like, cobbled together in someone's backyard. Here's like an aftermarket, multimedia system that would just slap in there and that'll do,
Right.
I had the S version, which, gets the Alcantara and leather sort of interior and the heated seats. Don't need that. You just go the Bongo version, manual auto, take your pick. But the sad news now is that order books have opened up again for the BRZ, but the prices have gone up. So
I see.
Paying, $1,300, at least $1,300 more for that car now than you were if you pre-ordered it, months and months ago.
I see. Well, Subaru's not silly. They know when something's in demand.
I got to do the launch review of this thing, and it's like everything has been improved in all the right places. Like the suspension and stability is much better. The transmissions are better. The engine's just got just enough improvement in power that you still have to drive it to enjoy it, but there's less annoying driving required. But yeah, no, I think it's just improved in all the right ways. Even the interior, like I thought the interior was like much improved, even though there's still elements of it that are a bit, but for the price, for what it is, I think it's right.
Good.
Was the launch review on it track, Tom?
Yes, I got to drive it back to back with the previous one.
And it's on the site. That review is on the site, so check it out. And if that's cobbled together in a backyard, I want to take my car to that person that's cobbling it together in the backyard, because it's a pretty good job. Okay, now I'll just finish this off with a Jeep Compass, and in fact the Trailhawk. So we're talking low $50,000 bracket, 52,650 before you put it on the road. 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo diesel, 9-speed auto. 125 kilowatts, 350 Newton meters, the peak starting at 1750. So it's got that beautiful diesel turbo, low down torque. It's all-wheel drive, of course. Now, on the plus side, I think the cabin refresh is a win. That was relatively recently done. And like all current Jeeps, and I've just been in a new model that'll be we'll be able to talk about pretty soon. Good storage. You get USB-A and C inputs all over the place, which I find really thoughtful. And it's trail rated, but it really means something in Jeep world. You get underbody skid plates, the low range gearing. It has some fair income off-road capabilities. But on the minus side, it's nudging Audi Q3 and Volvo XC40 kind of pricing when you're in that price bracket. Overall, the interior is just a little uninspiring. The visibility is quite a high belt line, and particularly around the back, the visibility can be a bit challenging. The lane keeping is really aggro. I had to turn it off. It had you jiggling the steering wheel because it's kicking you to either side of the lane. I found it distracting at best and kind of dodgy at worst. It's reasonably noisy. That's just a diesel thing, not confined to this car. The seats are flat. Jeep is kind of famous for just flat seats. Not a lot of support, particularly in the back, which I think allows the seats to fold flatter, which is an upside, but you don't get a lot of sculpting or support in the back seat. 100,000 kilometre warranty, it's 5 years, but 100,000 kilometres, which is off the pace. Everyone's at unlimited Ks now, and it just feels a bit heavy. So yeah, sum up, not a class leader, but it's going to be great off-road. If you really want to get to that camping spot that you're determined to get to, be hard to find a better vehicle. It's got that up its sleeve, but I don't think it's class leading in most aspects.
Yeah, Matt and I took this one for a spin the other day, and I've got to say, there are some areas where it really has improved. I think it looks great. I think this, the software, bring it back to software again. The software's really improved. That was a real weak point for Jeep. Or now it actually the old chunky thick steering wheel that I thought that suited that car really well. Now it's got this thin kind of almost trying to be premium steering wheel, and I don't like it. Bring back the old one.
Okay.
And some of the switch gear left a little to be desired, but hey, that's just me.
There you go.
I really like the look of the Trailhawk. All the red tow hooks that they add on there, the bonnet decals and all that stuff. I think it looks fantastic.
Yes.
But I also wonder how many buyers are actually taking that car off-road, really going bush bashing.
Too true. It could be you just want to know that capability is there. And I think, we've all been on Jeep launches and they don't muck around. They'll throw some pretty tough terrain at you, and those vehicles will cope with it exceptionally well. So it's just that back of the mind. Yeah, I know I can go there if I want, kind of thing, maybe. All right, that's great. That's our garage. We're going to dip into comment of the week on top of the shipping container at the front of the CarsGuide forecourt. And last week we were talking about underrated SUVs. We had our top 10 list. And Darth Melbius, who is somewhere in the Star Wars universe, I'm sure, says, good selection. It's a pity you didn't speculate on why they're underrated. So here's my subjective impression of each and why they are underrated in my view. So I'm going to rattle through these, okay? Suzuki was the Ignis, such a niche brand. Ford, the Escape, interesting. Simply the worst customer experience I've had trying to buy a Vignale. If it was not for range, it feels like Ford would pull a Holden. Now, Peugeot, and Mal called out the whole SUV range, the 2008, 3008, 5008. Perception of Peugeot is that it's European with the service expenses that come with European brands. Citroën C4, same as Peugeot, comes across as expensive to maintain and insure. These brands feel like they carry the risk of just upping shop and pulling out. Skoda Kodiaq comes with the reliability stigma of the VW stable. Expensive, and anything you want is optional. Merc GLB, can't afford it. I think it's underrated, just not in most people's budget. Sanyong Corando, too risky. Brand is unsure of its own existence. Too much risk in how long they'll hang around, and resale values. Mazda CX-8, it's like the bloated cousin. I can't think of a bloated cousin that is in our family, but anyway, just meh and totally uninspiring. Mini Countryman, too expensive, tied to BMW, expensive to maintain and insure. Passat All-Track, a pretend SUV, just would never think of taking it off-road, and stock is non-existent, which is ironic because he's obviously after one to determine whether or not stock is there. But anyway, good list. And thank you very much, Darthy, for filling us in.
Maybe you can follow up that comment with a comment on this week's podcast.
Precisely. Let's hope so. But with that, we have reached the finish line. So I want to say thank you, Tung.
Thank you.
And thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
And thanks to our production maestro, Mr. Brett Sullivan, stepping into the not always fashionable shoes of Mr. Pritchard this week, although I did notice he's wearing a T-shirt saying, "Real cars don't shift themselves." Jump into the conversation, Cars Guides on Facebook and Instagram, or email us at comments@carsguide.com.au. Listeners, please take a moment to rate and review the show. 5 is the preferred number of stars. And viewers, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the Cars Guide channel so you can stay on top of all our latest content. But before we go, today is a good day. The bulb finally burned out in my check engine light.